Hello everyone, I'm JD and I'm going to tell you why Bitcoin has no value, but neither does anything else. What this is really about is what is the story behind crypto. So we're going to talk about this in terms of kind of philosophical underpinnings and motivations behind why crypto, or I think crypto has risen, and why I think it's going to continue expanding no matter what we do. No matter how much countries try to shut it down or ignore it, it's going to keep rising. It's going to keep growing. It doesn't have any real value in the sense of tangible benefit specific to Bitcoin. However, nothing really does. The US dollar has value because we all agree that it has value. It's not backed by anything and hasn't been for decades. Some would argue it's backed by oil, but that's a longer economic conversation. One of the first things I want to talk to you about is that cryptocurrency and blockchain technology more expansively is about offloading trust. We have seen really longer than this, but really since 2008, since the Great Recession, we have had a steady decline in trust for centralized institutions. Now, the US especially has always kind of had a level of distrust for centralized institutions. I mean, this goes all the way back to state rights versus federal rights, and how we constructed our own constitution, right? Limiting the power of the federal government. Whatever you think about what that should look like today, there is a deep distrust for centralized governance in America. So I think in 2008, after the mortgage crisis kind of crashed the whole economy and demonstrated bad actors and negligent actors in mortgage lending and banking, after that, people started going, oh, maybe I don't want to trust these banks with my money. Now, we kind of had to. We didn't have much of a choice. There's nowhere else to put it. But roughly at that same time, we have the initial rise of Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin, right? And we don't actually know who Nakamoto is or who Satoshi is, but Bitcoin itself as an algorithm was kind of in its white paper discussed as being this new way of doing currency that doesn't require something centralized. So it doesn't require a centralized bank. So if you don't trust banks, if you don't trust the Fed, if you don't trust the government, if you don't trust really anyone but yourself, crypto was designed for you. It was designed for the paranoid who don't want to trust anybody. And over the years, since 2008, we have seen only more and more reasons to distrust. We've seen massive sweeping problems, especially in the US, in the political space. What matters at this point is there is a deep and abiding lack of trust in our political system. But more than that, we've seen banks fail, but there is a deep level of distrust for any centralized institution. And this is where cryptocurrency and blockchain creates an opportunity. There's an opportunity to take people's distrust of centralized organizations and say, in order to gain value, you don't have to trust a centralized institution at all. We have decentralized finance applications built on Ethereum where you can trade crypto without ever touching a centralized institution whatsoever. There are also centralized exchanges, but the crypto community has seen those explode as well. Celsius got ruined by Terra Luna and its crash after Do Kwon screwed that up. The Sam Bankman-Fried FTX debacle was a huge black mark on the crypto community. But again, that was a centralized exchange that was a bad actor in the space. And we just have more and more reason not to trust centralized exchanges. Even Coinbase, the largest centralized exchange in the world right now, and especially in the US, they are building out Base, which is a layer 2 network protocol on Ethereum that they intend, at least they claim, to eventually decentralize as well, so that people who want true decentralization they can have it. I don't have to trust a bank. I don't have to trust anyone but myself. Now, that's not just happening in the crypto space. This is happening in the cybersecurity space with zero trust architecture. More and more, there's attempts to try to make it so I don't have to trust people in things like voting, right? Again, not to step on landmines in the political space. I'm not a super political guy. I have some perspectives on this, but people don't want to have to worry about trust. They want to be able to say, okay, cool, the number of people who voted were the number of people who voted, and I don't have to worry about mail fraud. I don't have to worry about all these other things. I just want a system that lets me trust immediately. And really what these technologies are about is about saying, I want to move my trust. I want to offload my trust from people who have considerably and significantly and commonly failed, and I want to put it into a technology or a process that is unbiased and frankly is just going to function how it's going to function, and it's transparent. And that transparency is another thing that crypto has going for it. As long as I have a wallet number, I can see everything that person has done on Ethereum. I may or may not be able to associate that wallet ID with that human, but that wallet ID can't hide in a sense. Now, there are ways to do it. There are multi-wallets and other things like that. But transparency is huge on the blockchain because in order for the blockchain to function appropriately, the ledger has to be open. At least right now. There's tons of technology in the space. Privacy is something that people are talking about. But for right now, that transparency is an epic incentive for people who don't want to trust to be able to be like, okay, wait a second. You know what? I'm going to go down this line and figure out who are the wallets I can trust and who are the wallets I can't. I recently was doing some just like meme coin trading, which I don't recommend, by the way. You can make money off of it. You can also lose a bunch of money. But I was doing it just to learn. And there are tons of scams involved in this space right now too, which is kind of one of the interesting tensions, right? There's tons of scams in this place that people are trying to go so that they can build trust or they can offload trust. But one of the things you can do if you're willing to take the extra step is, and what I've started doing, is when you find scams, you can start just black flagging for yourself wallet IDs. Like, oh, I have a running list of wallets that I do not trust because of various scams that I've run into both on Solana and on Base and on Ethereum that I just look at and go, cool, these 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 associated wallets, if they are anywhere near a particular collection or a particular investment, I'm probably going to stay away from it. And you can start to do that. You can start to flag things for yourself because it's transparent. So you can go on Base and you can go on Base Scan and you can see the wallet IDs and you can see every transaction that they've made and which contracts they're associated with. You can do a little bit of research on your own. So the offloading of trust and the transparency is a big part of why I think people want blockchain as a technology in general. Bitcoin just has the benefit of brand recognition that none of the other coins have. Ethereum has its second, Solana is probably third. Doge might be higher, even though Doge doesn't have any foundational function. Bitcoin is not the best technology in the space, though, and its functions are extremely limited. And that's okay. Right now, its value has more to do with something we'll talk about in a minute, and kind of a secondary motivation, which is more about freedom. But under the guise of trust or the offloading of trust, that's where crypto really does help a ton to make people feel more comfortable and feel more in control of their finances, their resources. And that's something that I think is lending heavily to crypto's boom. Even though right now crypto doesn't have significant market penetration. And by that I mean like the percentage of people who are actually involved in crypto today versus the total number of people involved in banking, for instance, is tiny. It's a sliver. So as we get more and more both institutional and personal investment into cryptocurrencies, one, that's going to increase the value of the space, but it's also going to mean that the people who are involved actually start to get a greater benefit from the decentralization because it becomes more decentralized. The desire for not having to trust a centralized institution or even a company, since like all of the Amazons and the Metas and the Googles of the world have, and Apples have taken all of our personal data and monetized us. And Web3, this like next stage of the internet that might be run decentralized instead of through Amazon web servers, that's an opportunity to say, you know what, I don't want some big company to have all of my data. And I would rather keep my data and run it through a Web3 application that is decentralized, where nobody owns it. And I get to use it how I see fit, and no one's selling my data. So the second thing that I think contributes kind of philosophically or from a motivation perspective to the rise of crypto today is the quest for freedom. We want freedom. And what I mean by that, especially as the world is hyper globalized, I mean, we've been globalized for a long time, but hyper globalized. And with that type of connectivity, we want the freedom, again, especially in the West, we want the freedom as individuals to say, I'm going to pick up, I'm going to travel, and I want to be able to take my resources with me. And I want to be able to function in that new society seamlessly. Crypto is an opportunity to have rapidly, in fact, almost instantly transferable value from one nation to the next. Laws and stuff are still getting figured out, but that is a serious freedom to be able to say, hey, we've got a currency, for instance, Ethereum, that I can use to buy stuff anywhere. Now, we don't have the market for Ethereum or for Solana, some of these like high throughput transactional blockchains where people are actually accepting payments. Like I can't go to a coffee shop and pay with Sol. Some places kind of as a funny thing or taking Bitcoin or whatever, but Bitcoin is more of a store of value at this point than it is an actual currency. But this quest for freedom means we want to have a currency that we can transfer easily and rapidly. And what cryptocurrency has that other currencies don't is theoretically infinite value density. Credit cards have this to a degree as well, but value density is this idea of how much something weighs to carry versus how much value can be stored on it. If I want to take enough money with me to go to a new country and live for months at a time, now I'm talking about bank transfers, more than likely. Maybe I use a debit card to pull money and resources, and that's another way to do it. But I'm talking about taking a lot more with me. With crypto, I can hold theoretically billions on a thumb drive, a cold storage wallet, and I can have billions. And there are people who have in cold storage thousands and thousands of Bitcoin. Right? That is value transferability and value density at a level that is incredible. Like nobody has a line of credit on their credit card for billions. I don't think a company would even do that. Nobody's sitting with billions in their bank account. Or if they are, then they're stupid. Because it's just a bad plan. If you're a billionaire, typically you have billions in real estate, you have billions in maybe art, you have an art collection that might be worth some of your millions. But you're not storing it as liquid assets that are easily accessible in the same way that Bitcoin is. It has this almost infinite value density and easy transferability and access. That is a combination that just has never existed in the history of mankind. For instance, one of the highest value density things that rich people used to buy all the time, and to a degree still do, is art. Right? A painting that's worth $10 million, say, that's pretty light. If I take it out of the frame and roll it up, I can have an immense amount of value held in that painting. And I can run it, and I can take it with me, and I have the value. Cool. But now I have to find a buyer. And finding a buyer for a $10 million art piece is not easy. Now, it's maybe easy if you move in the right circles, but whatever level of ease you're talking about, it is significantly harder than plugging my cold storage wallet into my phone, connecting to a decentralized exchange, making the exchange into something like US dollar coin, and then sending that through a centralized exchange into my bank account. Like now, I have rapid transferability of possibly billions into direct action into a fiat currency that I can use. Now, eventually, I think that last step is really just gonna go away. I'm not even gonna need to put it into a fiat currency, because a secondary layer 1, layer 2, maybe even a layer 3 currency is going to be able to buy the things I need to live or to run my business. And fiat currencies are, unless they go to some sort of dollar coin or something similar, are going to lose any value whatsoever, because people aren't going to want them anymore. Because we recognize they have no value. And if they have no value and they're slower than using this other asset that also has no real tangible value, then I might as well use that one instead. Because its only real value is its transferability. And that's where someone who owns 1,000 Bitcoin can say, cool, I need 70 grand. I need it right now because there's this big opportunity. Cool, I'm going to transfer that 70 grand into whatever coin I need to use that my seller will accept and make the purchase. And that can be on the order of seconds. If I'm really good at it, more than likely minutes. The liquidation of assets and transfer of value can happen like that. That is huge. And that ties with the quest for freedom. We want freedom and we want speed. We're impatient. That's another aspect to this, but it goes back to freedom. We don't want anything constraining us. If I want to buy a house and I have the value to buy a house, I want to just be able to buy it. If I want to buy a car and I have the value to buy a car, I want to be able to buy it. If I'm running a business and I have the value, liquid, to be able to purchase the materials that I need for the business outright without having to do, like, especially from a foreign nation, without having to do the exchange rates and everything else, like, crypto provides a way to do that. And this is why it is extremely destabilizing to governments in the way that we've done currency for so long. But it's only going to get worse / better because at a certain point, it will overcome the current understanding of value. Because it's faster, it's simpler, it's easier to use. It's to a degree more secure. There are problems with it and more security needs to go into it. But it's more secure than the vast majority of banks right now. And to go back to the offloading of trust, it is transparent. And people will be like, oh, but crypto is being used for like drug deals and slave trade and arms races and all this kind of stuff. And that is true. Absolutely. But so is the US dollar and cash. That is the number one used currency for nefarious purposes around the world right now today. So I can't judge the currency by how people try to use it. It's like judging a hammer by one mass murderer who decides he wants to use a hammer as his tool. It's not what it was designed for. It can be used that way, but that wasn't its purpose. So anyway, the quest for freedom is the second. So the first is this kind of offloading of trust. The second is this super heavy desire for freedom. And then this third is maybe I'm too early for this. I'm going to say this and people are going to maybe think I'm a little crazy. Cryptocurrency, to me, looks like the emergence of digital nations. Ethereum, for instance, is a blockchain that has tons of stuff built on it. And there are tons of people who are devoted to the Ethereum ecosystem. And Ethereum is expensive, but that's why like layer 2s like Polygon and Base are making it less expensive to run off of. And these are the places where I think we could end up with digital nations. That's where there are disaggregated groups of people who are devoted to a particular cryptocurrency or a particular network chain that's what they use. And there will be another devoted group of people who spend almost all of their time and energy on Solana, and another group on Avalanche, and another group on whatever, insert coin name, network name here. A lot of people are crossing between, but each chain has a little bit of its own culture, its own society, its own memes that are building up in that space. And crypto is not monolithic. By its very design, it's meant to be decentralized, and it is meant to be disaggregated. So what we could see is an emergence of a kind of digital nation, digital cultures built around these things. NFTs is another part of that. Non-fungible tokens, so artworks that are crypto enabled. That's destabilizing to modern nations, and a lot of nations are already trying to fight back against this. This is why places like China that have a vested interest in maintaining authoritarian control hate cryptocurrency and have banned it, because it is by its very nature almost impossible to control. There are regulations and stuff that the US is putting in place and the UK is putting in place and the EU and everything else. But to a certain degree, like, they're fighting an uphill battle, because the democratic principles that built the Western world, for good or ill, do not support the continued expansion of centralized power that has happened over the course of the last, especially 100 years. And as this technology grows, this technology destabilizes the ability for a centralized power to consolidate power. There are still ways around it. They will continue to do so, at least for the next 20, 30, 40 years. I don't think we're going to see this change in the next few years. This is more generational. But blockchain technology is likely, if not adopted and co-opted by central governments, is likely to destabilize governments. That's the way the technology is built, is to disaggregate and to decentralize. So the more centralized and focused a government is, the harder time they're going to have with cryptocurrencies. And for people who are in the space, the more the space expands, the more value expands into the space, and the more greed involved, the more people are going to go, I want to be in on it too. And no, I don't want these nations to ruin my value proposition. Because people want to be free. Now, this is where there's actually an opportunity, and I'll move to my next point. There's an opportunity for governments to say, we're going to go all in on blockchain. And we're going to use blockchain as a technology to solve some of these problems before they become real problems. Where I actually decentralize and use the fact that blockchain is decentralized to fix some of my very expensive bureaucratic issues. Taxation is a perfect example. If I provide a blockchain ID to every single one of my citizens, okay, cool, your tax ID becomes your blockchain ID. You tie it to your wallet IDs, and cool, you can be taxed easily. What it takes is for the government to say, I'm going to use a different central system. But the major benefit of that is you could fire the whole IRS. And you could do it algorithmically and check whether or not people are paying taxes. Which also would allow you to possibly lower taxes, because now I don't have to pay the IRS. The whole IRS. It could save money on tons of bureaucratic portions of our society because we just automate it to a smart contract on the blockchain. People don't like that. Especially people in the crypto space. They're like, whoa, don't use blockchain against me. But this is an opportunity for governments early to say, no, I'm going to adopt blockchain and I'm going to use it to make sure that we do some things more efficiently and just better than we have in the past. And actually, by doing it better and more efficiently, if we have leaders who are trustworthy, which I'm not sure we do, but let's say that we did, we can save the government immense amounts of resources that maybe then they don't have to take from the citizens. Or they can put towards fixing things that actually need to be fixed. We are just scratching the surface of how this tool could be used to better tons of different things in our society. But if we approach it understanding that at the core of this technology and its adoption is actually people who want things, and people haven't changed, right? There's some research about how our minds are changing and our attention is changing. The rapidity of technological change is orders of magnitude faster than the adaptation of human brains and human bodies. We are not that different. And because we are more steady in this case than the technology, understanding what our motivations and underlying desires are can explain a little bit and help us predict a little bit of what the future might look like for blockchain as a technology, but also for us using that technology. So as far as predictions, like this isn't about price predictions, this is about cultural predictions. I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see a boom in adoption of cryptocurrencies. Nations are going to have to adopt it as well, not just as some sort of value stream or investment, but the technology itself in order to mitigate some of the threats to power. And if they don't, that disaggregation is going to slowly tear apart nations. And we're just as likely as not in a democratic society to be destroyed as to be empowered by this kind of technology. I will say that an authoritarian regime is more likely to be destroyed by this technology. So when I say destroyed, don't hear what I'm not saying. I use that word, and obviously I use it recognizing that it'll be a little bit incendiary, but I'm not saying that it's going to cause wars and tear down and people are going to lose their entire livelihood and everybody's going to die. This is not an apocalyptic understanding of the term destroy. This is much closer to the slow decay of economic, political, and social power, basically, that will occur for nations that decide not to use this technology and technologies like it as they advance. And authoritarian regimes are most likely or in the most danger of failing to adapt to these technologies. So that's actually a really good thing for humanity in one sense. In another sense, it could be worse because it raises questions about, should we be decentralized? Are the democratic principles the ones we ought to be running on? Whatever the case may be, or whatever your thoughts are, I would love to hear them in the comments. Ultimately, we have to be willing to address this technology and understand that it's already changing the way that we think about finance, institutions, investments, and it's only going to become more, just more. I'm JD. Thanks for listening to Don't Hear What I'm Not Saying, and I'll see you next time.